It is good to see everyone here. I think we have a full house. Which is very exciting. We have everybody on the list, and the list is going around if you want to sign. Just to start, I'd like to do a land declaration. As always, we are recognizing that we are meeting on the unceded and traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people, particularly the Abequit First Nation in this area. And also, we recognize and express our sorrow about the thousands of unmarked graves that have been found near residential schools. We're very upset about that, and we recognize that as a committee and as a community. So thank you. Do we have any conflicts of interest? Does anybody come into a pile of money or anything? Or
you know where it is?
No? Okay, great. Okay. Approval of agenda. The gentlemen from the CADC that were going to come and make a short presentation are not able to come and make a short presentation. But we'll leave that on the agenda because Mr. Brown is here to make a short presentation. Thank you. Okay?
Not on behalf of CADC.
No, just hanging around. We would welcome the mayor for sure. And also, let's do a quick who are we, because Craig hasn't been here before, and there's only a couple of us that came from the last committee. So, Paul, you know, Craig, Ashley.
Hi, Jane McDonald.
Jane, were you on the original?
Yeah.
Yes, I was. Yep.
And Bill.
Bill Campbell. Bill.
And Robin Graham. And I'm Bob Gray.
Hi, Greg.
Hi.
Good. And we have Alex and we have Robert here.
And just questioning, does everybody have a package? Because I do have some extras.
Take one.
Okay.
Jamie has hers memorized, but she'll be happy to
Just using his notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Something like myself.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we need to approve the agenda. Can we, first of all, are there any other business that is coming up that doesn't fit anywhere else? I'm not sure we're going to get to change to Provincial Affordable Housing Development Program, but if we don't, we will push that off till the next meeting. Anything else? Shall we have approval of the agenda by consensus?
Yes.
Amen. Okay. Approval of minutes. We will actually need a mover and seconder for that. With any luck, somebody that was here. Okay. Who would like to move approval of the minutes? Okay, Jamie. And seconder. Thank you, Bill. And are there any changes or updates from them before we approve it? Any changes? No? All those in favor of adopting the minutes as official, say aye. Excellent work by you. Okay. Business arising. The CADC wasn't in the minutes, but it's still business arising. So, Philip, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Wayne Ersno is the new CEO or general manager for Charlottetown Area Development Corporation, and Terry Hennessy from the bike shop living down on Water Street is one of the two City of Charlottetown representatives on the CADC board. The other is Craig Walker, who was the former manager of water and wastewater, so a good guy to have on the CADC. And per your package, you'll see a catalyst for economic development in the greater Charlottetown area. This is a report that was released by CADC in March of 2021. It's their strategic planning on housing, for affordable housing. And you know, when I looked at the most recent campaign that just ended last night, a lot of the candidates, local candidates were talking about affordable housing, how they were going to address it. I know in one brochure they made the statement that the housing crisis is really being with us for the last few years? No, it's been there. It's been with us a lot longer than that. I go to a editorial in the Guardian newspaper Friday, December 13th, 2013, and the heading is "Affordable Housing in Charlottetown Reaches a Crisis Point." And being a candidate 3 times in a mayoralty race, 2010, 2014, it's been around since 2010. Now, the situation in some of those homes was just the state of some of them and what people were living in. Now we're moving from that to gentrification through Airbnb. So, to me, it's an issue that's not going away because we think we have the magic wand. I think, like, as you saw there this past weekend, I think Robin was part of the article. Crisis hits home, and talking about the Airbnb situation, but also public housing. Public housing is something that I've been talking about 2010, 2014, 2018. Bill can tell you with the Affordable Housing Corporation that we got together early on in 2019 to work on the Martha's Place Affordable Housing Project in Acadian Drive. Great project, and we need more projects like that. I know that people talk about, or developers talk about, just give us the money, we'll develop and keep them for 10 to 20 years. I think the King Square Affordable Housing Corporation has been in business for 40 years, I'd say, and it's a model that we can develop or we can expand, enhance, and look at co-op housing too. So the discussions that Wade and Terry and I had a couple of weeks ago was maybe the city has to look at putting some skin into the game. And we do have a property down on Fitzroy Street. It's now the Holland College parking lot. It's used for Holland College. It's the site of the old Charlottetown Forum. And that's owned by the city, but we have an agreement with Holland College that they can use that for their staff and pay the taxes on it. So at some point in time, I think, that would be an appropriate piece of property for public housing in the downtown. If you go up to 203, the Canadian Mental Health Association has put in a proposal for 33 units, and a quarter of them will be affordable housing. That's under this rapid housing initiative through the federal government. So, it's about developing the downtown, but allowing for more walkable connection to transit, to downtown amenities, a drugstore, park, and so forth. And I think that's what Wade and Terry they want to present that at a future meeting. And I'd be more than willing to be part of that discussion. But again, this is all just exploratory. Philip Brown is not saying the land's available. Don't want to be caught for that. Here, seeing something on Twitter, Brown has got some land. No, it's a proposal.
You did say me.
No, Robert, no. Because we're live stream, people are watching us all the time, which is great. So I just think that we have an opportunity. Province also has property out there at the end of Northridge Parkway, over 82 acres. It's the Andrews property. So we have an opportunity to provide land and look at more public housing. And whether that's affordable at 25 to 30% of family income, or tying it in with CMHC. There's a number of options out there. I just don't want to keep next year, in Friday, December 13, 2021, affordable housing in Charlottetown reaches crisis point. Like, we have to. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid we are going to see those headlines next year for sure. Questions for the mayor?
Just a comment, to create a level playing field, Mr. Mayor, you have to give the nonprofits like ours, King Square, or any of the others too, an opportunity to have equity so that we can compete for these jobs. One of the best ways, of course, make land available to us. The only reason why we built Martha Place was because of the Sisters of St. Martha gave us almost $1 million. That's right. And before that, nobody would look at us. They'd only look at private developers who put the money in their pockets, and therefore they have the equity to take on another project. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Paul.
that's a good point, Bill, thank you. Anything else? Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. The STR bylaw process progress. We each received a copy of Robert's report that will go to council, or will go somewhere. Where? Yeah.
Maybe I'll just, you can go back to Robert on, have
Yeah,
his
okay.
report, but that report is meant to kind of bring everybody back, refocus and rebalance the discussion in the community. COVID has clearly, been intermittent, stop, start, so the discussion will start next month. The staff will write a planning report, as we always do, and the first stop will be the planning board. They'll make some commentary on what's being proposed. They'll make a recommendation to council. It'll go to the council the second Monday of the month. It'll be at the council meeting, and council will make a determination at that time whether to host a public meeting in October. The mayor's here, and between him and his colleagues, we don't want to definitively say that something can happen when you're going through this process of new information or whatever. So, but that is the intent. And then after the public hearing, if it does happen in October, it will loop back to planning board and council in November. But there is a lot of moving parts on this, but it's critical. We spent quite a bit of time on it. We want to get it right. There's other bylaws that are in play. But again, you do have the report from Robert. You may have some questions of him directly in regard to where we are at this stage. But all that is sort of a bit of an academic and kind of where we've been, where we are, and possibly where we're going. But the planning report, the meat of it, comes next month. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great, okay, thank you. So the public meeting, the probably public meeting, will be announced or at least decided to have, if they are, on the second Monday of October.
Correct, yeah.
Is that Thanksgiving?
If it is Thanksgiving, it goes to the next day. If it's a holiday.
Okay, and then we will meet the week after on our regular schedule and the meeting won't happen before that. No, it'll be like 30 days.
Yeah, the meeting is it's usually the Tuesday or the Wednesday of the last week of the month.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 days that we usually hold public
Okay.
meetings, and we were hoping that we could possibly have that meeting at the Charlottetown Hotel, because we do use the Confederation Center. That's a really good COVID location, but it's very impersonal, and it's not, in my mind, not as conducive, but we may have to go back to that depending on where we are in relation to the
Yeah.
issue of COVID.
Okay, and that will give us time to, we can start to talk about it today, but give us time to put together a response as a committee and also decide on courses of actions. Like we may want to speak as a committee at that public meeting. We may want to, individuals may want to speak on their own at the public meeting. We may want to do a presentation to council if they're willing.
Yeah.
Or maybe even if they're not, we may want to at least put something in writing about it, okay, and where we want to go on. Okay, so there's lots of options. Yes?
So, Mr. Chair, at a minimum, I mean, anybody's entitled to speak at the public meeting. We would urge you to participate in that, because that's kind of the legal part of it, and so you would present something, or I'm not suggesting what you should do, but if you wanted to make a submission, make the submission. It goes with the package, so everybody reads it, as opposed to like if it goes to council, it can be sort of separated from the process. Everybody gets to read all of the commentary coming out on SDRs.
And we may wish to do a number of those options.
Right, sure.
We may wish to do both, public and council presentation. After all, we are a creation of the city, so they might be interested in what we have to say, or they are for sure. So that's where we are in the process. Robert, perhaps you can, we'll do this for you. Robert, perhaps you can talk maybe just a little to get us started on your report?
Sure, yeah.
I know we've all read it and most of us have memorized it, but it might be good to go over it again.
All right, no, that sounds good. So basically, as Alex has stated, the report that staff prepared is basically a technical background report. It basically provides a summary of all the research that staff has done to date, as well includes results from the public meeting we had back in May, the community survey that was done in 2019, some of the engagement that was done during 2019 via email, written, or when we had the public information sessions. So all that information is kind of collated and summarized there, outlining some of the topical issues that revolve around STRs. So basically, kind of just going through a high level of the report, we have the summary, basically the land use impacts that STRs present from a land use compatibility perspective, its impact on housing, and that's what you folks are interested in, looking at that correlation of STRs and its impact on the availability and of course the affordability of the local long-term housing market. So some of that information you'll find interesting from your point of view. Take a look at that. We also do a jurisdictional scan. We look at basically what the rules and regulations have been for short-term rentals thus far. So there has been some conversation that we've received from operators and some residents that they found that there was a lack of regulation prior to, but in fact there was a methodology and there were regulations that if someone wanted to operate a short-term rental, they could have done so as a home-based business. So we have a home-based business section in the zoning bylaw which allows for a tourist accommodation or a tourist home, and that allows basically only a single detached dwelling to be rented or used for a short-term rental accommodation. And the regulations of the bylaw clearly put in restrictions on how many bedrooms could have been used if you decided to do that option, and then it had to be the proprietor, so the owner had to be their principal residence. And often the case is they would be present at time of stay. So those regulations have been there for over 10 years. They've been in the bylaw. They weren't necessarily labeled short-term rental, but they were labeled as a tourist accommodation, which a short-term rental basically is. We also include an outline of some of the provincial regulations and licensing issues that we ran across when staff was doing work on this file. We've also discussed some of the other concerns that we have for building upgrades. So from a building and fire code perspective, where we have conversion of long-term housing units done without, in some instances, without permits or occupancy being granted. So a lot of that work was done, without any type of approval from the city. So that also brings up some building and fire code issues and safety issues for the occupants that would be using those short-term rental accommodations. And then finally, we provide a jurisdictional scan from 3 major capital cities across Canada. The reason we used those larger urban centers was because they were early adopters of STR regulations. So they've gone through the implementation process. They've even gone through, some of them, the appeal process when it was challenged at a local tribunal or provincial tribunal. So they've gone through kind of a lot of the hard work up front. They've had to back up kind of their proposed regulations, which we've outlined in a table in the appendices, and provided basically a methodology on how to implement and regulate short-term rental operations, and that's usually done through a licensing framework. So we've included options that should be considered when looking at developing a short-term rental regulatory framework. One option is you're looking at zoning changes. So basically, what dwelling unit type should be permitted for an STR, what zone can that occur in, and then also looking at a licensing requirement. So that short-term rental operators, if they want or they wish to be licensed and fully legal, there would be a licensing requirement which they would have to be approved under, and there would be certain conditions that would be listed that they would have to adhere to. And of course, there's the taxation and some of the fee collection because regulating short-term rentals, it's not a cheap option. Staff in a lot of municipalities look towards third-party software scanning tools, and these tools basically do data scraping. So they basically go out and they collect data on properties that are being short-term rented on websites like Airbnb or VRBO, and then they link that to the property identification number, and then from there we can see if it's compliant with the regulations or not. So all that work's usually done by a third-party software company that provides the data, and they update that data on a bi-weekly basis sometimes, and staff is then alerted to what properties are conforming, what properties are not conforming, and generally properties that have been utilized as short-term rentals. So basically, there's those components. The last crucial component, of course, of any bylaw is the enforcement mechanism. So a bylaw is only as effective as it is adhered to. So if you don't have penalties and you don't have enforcement, then they're just basically written rules. So basically, staff's put forward together, and one of the options to consider is a bylaw enforcement, and it's called a summary conviction bylaw enforcement bylaw itself. So it would enable staff or municipal staff, municipality, to leverage fines and penalize STR operators that would not be compliant with the zoning regulations. And that's up to council to adopt whatever scenario they see fit. So at the final page, there's just the 5 scenarios that we've just summarized. Those 5 scenarios, of course, everyone probably recognizes them if they've read the Locksmith report. It goes over from scenario 1 being the most restrictive, where it'd be permitted in any dwelling unit type except for apartments, and it would have to be the owner's principal residence, to scenario 5 that would potentially allow for multiple STRs owned by one owner. So you're looking at commercial STRs, permitted though in targeted zones. So in zones that would permit like a hotel or motel. So those would be like mixed use or commercial zones. So those 5 options are still there. We received a lot of feedback, especially during this May 17th meeting this year, on the scenarios. In fact, staff received quite a bit of feedback, not just from the public meeting. We received multiple emails. We received a petition even with hundreds of signatures optioning a preferred scenario, as well as multiple calls. So we've kind of collected that information, collated it into the background report, and we, like I stated before, we have our options on how an STR regulatory framework could look like for the city of Charlottetown. The last thing I'll just note is the impact of commercial STRs. So from an affordable housing perspective, your committee's looking at the availability and affordability of the long-term housing market. So I would direct your attention to how commercial STRs, so basically when one owner or a corporate entity, like a numbered company, owns multiple properties, and then they take those properties and they convert it from, say, long-term rental or to short-term rental. And so we see that, pre-pandemic levels, we saw an increase in commercialization of STRs. So the highest proportionate growth of the STR segment, and basically you can cut it into two sections. The one which is truly home sharing, which means I only own one property and I'm renting that one property, it's my principal residence. So if I'm going to the cottage, for example, or I'm going away on vacation, I can probably short-term rental my property out, knowing full well that when I come back, that's my long-term housing. So I'm not depleting from the long-term housing stock. As opposed to the opposite, where we have commercial STRs, where either an owner or corporate entities buying up multiple properties, taking them out of the long-term housing market, and then offering them as short-term rental only. So that not only depletes the long-term housing stock, but it also increases the price, inflates the price of the local housing market too, because now it's profitable to run commercial STRs. Therefore, the person's probably more willing to pay for a property, knowing full well that if they do some renovations, they can make a profit off that through commercial STRing. So that's kind of a brief high-level summary of the report, some of the options to look at when implementing an STR regulatory framework. As Alex has mentioned, staff will be coming forward with a formal recommendation, and that will be found in the planning report. All this report kind of alludes to is kind of best practices that's happened so far, and some of the information that we've gathered from residents and from our own research.
Okay,
and,
thanks.
Yeah, I can.
Okay, thank you, Robert, for that summary. Just to start discussion, and throw in a perk as a chair to start discussion. When I read it last night, your report, and it's good, like it's well done, well researched, whole package. Congratulations and thank you for that. You've done a real service to the city. It appears how we got to here is a story of cracks, the things falling through cracks. The enforcement of the current bylaw, the ability to enforce the current bylaw, and which doesn't say anything about buying other properties and running hotels, you know. But the enforcement of that has fallen through the cracks because the way the bylaw was written or whatever. Okay, the provincial licensing system of tourist homes. There are huge cracks in there, and the communication back to the city and what's happening. Things have fallen through. Building permits, people building without permits. That's another huge crack. That's all I saw was just boom, boom, boom. Things that fell through. And we can find out how many STRs we have pretty much through those scraping apps and things, but you can't find out exactly where and who is doing it, so to approach them. So those are all difficult things that when I'm reading this and going, holy moly, no wonder we got to here, you know, and yeah, we need to do something here for sure. Okay, thank you. Others?
Mr. Chair, just one thing, we don't have a bylaw.
Okay, so
We're developing a bylaw. And
Okay.
what's been going on,
what happened to the original one?
we didn't have an original bylaw. We never had.
Alex?
Well, I guess tourist homes. This is a tourist city.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's-
there's
okay.
provisions in the zoning bylaw for tourist homes, always has been, and that has worked. The problem of all of the things that you're alluding to has to do with technology and rules and law, because these things have morphed. So they were never, renting 30 days or less was never really contemplated in a zoning bylaw. That's why there was all these legal challenges. People keep asking why the city didn't pursue this. Well, if you're going to pursue it in court, you have to point out exactly where your bylaw says you can't do it. No zoning bylaws said that you couldn't do it. So you're right that because of technology, the law, you need to reinforce in your bylaw the actual rules, then you enforce. And then there's some things that we can do on
Okay.
enforcement. So, but it's all valid. It's just a sequence.
Thank you.
of
Let's have people on the committee. What do you want to say?
I saw a CBC article recently that said that the planning department was recommending that short-term rentals not be for apartments, right? That people could rent. I think I just want to get your viewpoint on that. Is that the recommendation going to council? Which is, I think, to me, that was like first level, right, of the report, the original report.
So that's the most recent, I think, CBC article that was published, I think today, I believe you're
Yeah, I saw
referring to
last
is
night,
the
I
option,
think.
yeah. So the CBC article did respond and stating recommendation. I guess what I would just state is that this isn't the formal recommendation from staff. Now, we did state that, you know, from a best practice perspective and what's been done in other jurisdictions, that it's always been regulated to principal resident. And also the fact that some municipalities have opted to not allow for apartments to be used as a short-term rental because it provides a lot of long-term housing. And there was also quite a few issues that municipalities were getting into and residents were getting into and in fact, you can see this in Halifax. A lot of condominiums were now becoming ghost hotels where basically a lot of investors are coming up, buying multiple units within that building and then renting them out as short-term rentals on Airbnb. So now you really have very few long-term housing within that building. It's now basically like a ghost hotel. So that option, that's actually, you're correct, it's in the report, it states principal residence, no apartments. That was just highlighting a best practice across Canada and something to consider when looking at developing a regulatory framework.
Okay. Anything else?
Do most jurisdictions have bylaws
Well,
currently, or everybody's kind of in the same boat that we are?
I would say everybody was in the same boat, and the tricky thing is that because of the nature of this town, we were the first boat to get, in Atlantic Canada, the first boat to be impacted because there's so much pressure on tourism here. So again, zoning bylaws are like legal cases. Other communities fight battles, they win the battle, then all municipalities jump in and say, we're going to use the same regulations on whatever. So by the time it was hitting here, it was hitting in Vancouver, Toronto, and these big centers. But even to pursue it at that time, if you could, they were all under legal challenge, that they weren't empowered at the municipal level to do what they were attempting to do. So I sometimes caution people, we never use examples when you're talking about adopting regulations of a big major center, because people go, that's not the same place.
Sure.
But nobody in Atlantic Canada has adopted these regulations other than Halifax has just started the process, but we were the ones that started it first, and then Halifax was calling us looking for some direction. Because of COVID, they got a little bit out ahead of us, but that doesn't mean that they're still not there yet. They're just starting to register people on the registry, but the regulation still hasn't been enforced. So hopefully that helps.
Okay,
So
thank you.
they say started to develop a registry of short-term rentals?
Right. It's and the other really tricky piece of this pie was the municipalities couldn't do anything until they found the scraping tool, which was technology.
Sure.
People were trying to find these things, like staff people. It's like whack-a-mole.
Sure.
And then the first thing you do, and for you folks that don't deal with this, if let's say you were a neighbor, you call us and we start to enforce it, and we get out in court because that's where we have to go. The judge will say, Mr. Forbes, do you universally enforce this, and you're sure that this is the only person that's not violating your bylaw? And if the minute you say you don't know who they are, the judge throws it at a court and says you have to apply the rule universally and enforce it. So that's why it's to Bob's comments. It has been a little bit difficult. It's like trying to get your hands around the thing, but I think we're there. It helps.
Okay.
So is ours.
Thank you. Go. Who's speaking? You?
I just said, I guess I just, so there's no registry whatsoever of short-term rentals? Or there?
Other Vancouver, Toronto,
Yeah.
they've started their registries.
So we don't have any here?
You don't have a registry because by its nature, this thing is trying to fly below the radar. Airbnb is not telling us where they are. We need a third party to tell us where they are and then force them to register. And if they're not registered, that's where the enforcement comes in. You say you're illegally operating an operation, you're not on our registry, you haven't been inspected. Therefore, you're going to be fined for not getting on the registry.
And Mr. Chair, in the report on page 5, actually it says 265 in total, 635 STR listings were registered. That's registered through the province.
Yes, okay, that was where I was trying to.
Not through us.
Okay,
Yeah.
but there is an actual, there's something.
Wasn't that Montreal study that was done from McGill, did that articulate a lot of the places in Charlottetown?
They were doing their own they were using their own data scraping tool. We were using ours. They compared the two. They were very similar. But you need those tools, and the municipality, because the gentleman that just hooked up the, we don't have an IT department that has got the wherewithal. The province has got the same problem. The province only is dealing with people who voluntarily register. Voluntarily register. The bottom line is there's lots of people who do not voluntarily register. And in order to, again, have an enforceable bylaw, everybody, it's the same as a building permit, everybody needs to get a building permit. You can't sort of, you can try to get around us, but eventually that will catch up with you.
So the judges can throw it out if you can't tell them exactly where all the problems are. Is that what you're saying?
Well, they will say, are you enforcing this bylaw universally? You can't, because it's good discrimination. If a neighbor says, well, why are they picking on me? There's a whole lot in town. Well, the judge says, well, where are they in town? And if you say, well, we don't know where they are until somebody tells us where they are, you run into a procedural problem, like it's like a speeding ticket.
Yep.
You have to be able to catch somebody and then indicate that, well,
There goes one now.
Roger, 30 speeding tickets were given on Lower Malpeque Road this month. Well, you know that you're enforcing it. But if the judge says, in 5 years only one person was speeding on Lower Malpeque Road, it shows a bit of an issue in regard to your ability to actually regulate whatever you're regulating.
Right, so there's no registry of short-term rentals. The only registry, there's also no registry of rentals.
Correct?
And the only registry that is going on of rentals is people voluntarily doing it through a site. And that way they're finding out what the rent was, because rent's tied to the apartment, not the tenant. So they're finding out what the rent was in the apartment previous to them owning it. And then they go to IRAC when there's an issue.
Is that the Darcy Lantier?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's it called, Robert?
It's
My
called
apartment?
My old apartment.
My old apartment.
Is there anything vetting that? What keeps someone going in there and say, like, if I own the building, log in and say I live
No.
here and
I don't think, that's why it needs, in my opinion, it certainly needs to be a lot more official, yeah.
If there's a complaint to IRAC though, then somebody can, the landlord can show up and say, here's.
Yeah,
the checks.
when it gets to IRAC, yeah. And it's expensive to do it.
I've had friends, they saw it posted of my old apartment, then like Darcy got them in touch with whoever posted it. The person who posted it had receipts and it was an incredibly easy win and they won like thousands of dollars back.
Yeah, to post it, you're supposed to upload the receipt,
Yeah.
the rent receipt. So it's not vetted, but it's not as Wild West as it could be, yeah, for sure. Okay, more about Robert's report or the situation that we find ourselves.
Do we know how successful so my understanding is in tourism, you have to register your cottage for rent. And then there's an inspection process and all those types of things and rating and whatnot. Do we know how successful that process has been? Because at one point, anybody could rent anything. You know, the shape of some of those places were pretty substandard. So I'm just wondering if that, as a comparison, do we know how successful that program is? Or
Yeah, so I guess that builds on the, so section 3.4 tourism industry and provincial legislation.
Yeah.
We get into, and now this is post or pre-COVID, of the 635 STR listings that were in Charlottetown, only 265 were actually registered with the province. So even the provincial registry is not that successful, and that's the issue that we've been finding.
Alex?
It's just a quick little, when the province is looking for their registration for the inspection, the inspection is just to deal with how comfortable it's going to be for you as a tourist.
Right.
When we go in, we're looking at it, is this place, is it properly inspected, is the wiring, not wiring, but is the building safe, is fire code issues? It's a much more rigorous look than are the towels. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish it, but they're looking at it for your experience as a tourist. We're looking at it from the life safety point of view, much more rigorous review.
Okay, good, thanks.
Yep, okay.
And Mr. Chair, just before, sorry, I know, Mr. Chair, this is your meeting. We inherited your meeting. But Mr. Chair, on page
So we have
6,
long history.
it says 2019, we about 60% of the listings were principal
Yeah.
residents.
40% weren't. And then from 2019, take it.
We don't know 2019 beyond yet, or beyond that 2-year period. But again, Mr. Robert Zilk mentioned about Halifax. Halifax has to make a number of changes, as he mentioned also, Robert mentioned. They're looking at a 1-year implementation.
Correct, yeah. So their initial, they're within the registration period. So step 1, get these things registered. That's what they're focusing on. Step 2 is then actually enforcing and implementing their bylaw changes.
Yeah.
How long has the registry been in existence? Like, when did they start it?
Yeah, I believe it's only been a little over a year now that they've started.
So you can get it quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things that really leapt out at me from your report is the fact that, what is it, 10 people derive more than half the revenue from short-term rentals in Charlottetown?
Yeah. That speaks to the commercialization of STRs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
10 people, and it's how many millions of dollars is the revenue?
4 million plus.
Yeah, you're getting into tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah,
You're
and
looking
half,
at- Yeah.
10 people are getting half. This isn't mom and pop renting even the neighbor's house. No.
No. Often the case, and I've seen the data firsthand, like the raw data, and I can tell you that the problematic commercial STRs are those held by investment companies or corporate
Yeah.
entities.
Here in Charlottetown.
Yeah, that's just Charlottetown.
And that's in Charlottetown.
Yeah, that doesn't even include
That's correct.
Stanhope or anything else.
Are they-
Okay.
Are they locally owned though, or are they national or whatever do we know?
Well, we do have some ownership information on it, and I can say that there are some big local operators.
Yeah, and there are local operators that own numbers.
Correct. And we also have individual residents that own between 10 to 15 properties.
Yeah,
So they're not even a corporate
So-
entity, but they register a corporate company, and then they have multiple ownerships over multiple properties, right? So it gets very complex when you get into the form of legal ownership, and that's one of the things I look at in the report is that it gets difficult because now you're looking at possibly multiple corporate entities that could be owned by certain individuals, right? But then that's a multiplier to the already multiple properties they own. So that's how this schisms out and becomes highly commercialized. And that is what impacts the local long-term housing market, for sure.
And will
And
they
that-
be grandfathered in, like once,
That's-
in hopes that,
that's something we're definitely going to discuss.
Yeah.
And that's something council will definitely discuss. Like, there is a concern that if you don't grandfather these ones that are already going and just put an end to the new ones, that people are going to lose their investments. But I'm also, yeah, oh, they'll fight it, fight like crazy. But also, when I hear that 5 people or 10 people are deriving millions and millions of dollars within our city, where there is no place to live right now on September 21st, 2021, there's no place to
It's
live.
unbelievable.
There really isn't. And when that many people, that few people are deriving that much money, multi-millions, I think there has to be some consideration of that in grandfathering, that these people, even if they were forced to pull back a lot, they'd still be okay. They'd be able to get to Sobeys a couple times a week for groceries, you know. And some people can't because they have to pay so much in rent. Robin?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I was talking to Connor, who's my friend, but he also works at Piper Affordable Housing, and he said this is it's the worst he's seen since he started. His phone's ringing off the hook. He's getting emails, rent evictions, you name it. People literally cannot find housing. Multiple of my friends are living in their cars, back with their parents. They have money, they can pay $2,000 in rent a month, but they can't find an apartment that will take them.
Yeah.
It is very, very, very severe.
Yeah.
I live in the Dominion building, and if I had to move, I couldn't find another place in Charlottetown.
I have 60-some clients right now that are homeless.
Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is my friends with full-time jobs, quite literally homeless, and it's what is happening?
Well, we're experiencing it daily. at King Square, unbelievable. The people are
Yeah.
having difficulties, it's just unreal.
Okay, we know the situation. The
Even
sit-
tomorrow, like
situation.
tomorrow, we're gonna have an IRAC hearing with a numbered company,
Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to help one of our tenants, they're trying to throw them out.
yeah, so we know the situation, so what are we doing? We've sent a recommendation to council and to planning board or somewhere that gets there, that we support option 2, okay? And we may stay with that, we may change that or whatever, we may enhance that recommendation, certainly. But when council comes up with their proposed plan, okay? Now, so at our next meeting, like before then, if you have ideas, I'd like to see them sent to all of us by email, okay? Okay? And if you want to even propose that we do something, please send it to all of us, and that way we can actually get at it next meeting. Also, you know, I think I will probably have a few proposals for us. Now, I'd like to discuss something now that we've put off, is the situation with evictions. And renovictions is one part of that, where you get evicted, you know what renovictions are. And then there's also just general evictions, but it's hard to straighten it out. What's the city's ability to restrict evictions for a period of time?
Right now,
Right now?
terrible,
Well,
because we don't have summary offense ticketing.
No, but.
No, but if I can just finish, Alex, we've been talking about it for 2 years of planning. It was going back, bouncing back and forth from one office to another. Now I think we know what it is, right, Alex? It's now with planning. We have to
Yes,
come up with it.
it'll become-
Plus, it may require a change in the Planning Act to add a schedule, which means that has to go to the House. Like, as I said, we've been dealing with this for the last couple of years, and it's been bounced back and forth. SOTs have to be brought in. We can't have summary offense ticketing, then all this talk is just going to end us up in court, which we will, and that'll cost us a lot more money. So we need summary offense ticketing. And there's lots of models around the Atlantic region that we can copy, paste.
I would submit that we're in a crisis situation for housing. Like, not a difficult situation, but an absolute crisis situation that requires way more creative and even radical solutions than really enhancing things to be built in the next couple years as quickly as possible, even grandfathering short-term rentals in, but getting that straightened out. Like, we need something just to keep people in their places. And whether it's legal or it won't hold up in court or whatever, that we have to take that risk. We got to say something.
We need to generate the political will to do something about it.
Well, the political will is to have summary offense ticketing so that someone builds a shed without a permit. All we can say to them now is that, okay, look, we can slap you on the wrist or we can go to court. If you have a summary offense ticketing system in place, it's a $250 or $500 fine. If you have a building where there's failed electrical or plumbing requirements, there's a schedule of fines for that.
Wouldn't a few slaps on the wrist send a strong message?
Well, no, fines would.
Your worship, just not to interject, but those fines that we're fining, it's still going to be a provincial court judge that does the finding. We have no ability to fine at the municipal level because the province haven't given us the ability. They have given us the ability to take somebody to court, and the court will fine on our behalf.
Right.
But we'll assign the fine, we'll organize the fine will be paid to us, but it's still the court. And in regard to the issue of eviction, the way that, I know this stuff is frustrating, folks, and I'm always the killjoy, but we are the municipality. We're called a creature of the province. And this creature has not been given any latitude with regard to housing, none. other than having some regulations in a official plan and a zoning bylaw to deal with housing in general. So we have no authority to deal with eviction. That's why the province has delegated that to IRAC.
I would suggest that our committee, having no authority in the world about anything, but we do have some influence. I would suggest that our committee might want to send to council a firm recommendation that they proceed post haste as fast as possible to absolutely stop evictions within the municipality, any kind of eviction, and the person has the right to take that. The landlord has the right to take that back to the city on appeal. Certainly, there's appeal processes for everything. But
Do you mean a rent eviction or an eviction?
an eviction.
Both, they're not paying the rent.
Yeah, I feel like,
Again, we have to get the province involved, generate that political will. That's what I was referring to.
Well, I think a first step for us might be to at least send that message to council here, tell them to get shaking, ask them to get shaking on influencing the province to be able to do that. Ashley, you were saying?
no, I understand the rent eviction piece, like, you know, or you have to put in something that whatever renovation they do actually, it allows you to increase the rent. You can just paint and say, okay, cool, we're gonna increase it by X. But to recommend not to evict, and I certainly sit on the side of finding affordable housing for people, but I really don't think that that's something that you can put in place, like the landlord, the property owner. I rate, if you have somebody that's totally trashing your house or not paying rent,
Sure.
right?
And where's the Tenancy Act?
Yeah.
Where's that at? That Tenancy Act was to address this issue of evictions.
Yeah.
Correct. That's where the
That's
authority
still-
presently lies 100% in the
Put it-
Tenancy Act to protect both the landlord and the tenants.
Yeah.
So any disputes goes through the Tenancy Act of IRAC. And it's so legalistic, that's why when you get in there, both sides have got to show up with all their documentation, and it's like the people's court, and then somebody rules that this is an okay eviction, or this one, we're gonna overturn it and let the tenant stay.
We have evictions where people have sold, the owner of the building has sold the building to a new owner, and all of a sudden people are out on the street.
I feel like that's a huge issue right now. I've seen that a couple times where someone buys the building at a way, way, way inflated price, which that's your decision to buy an inflated price building. And now they want to double and triple the tenants' rents because they cannot afford the mortgage for the building that they bought. And it's like, it doesn't.
Yeah, and that should be certainly appealable under the Tenants Act, because rent is connected to the apartment, not the
Yeah.
tenant or the landlord. Okay, so, in conclusion, I think, we would entertain proposals that we would send around, okay, and comment on them, and feel free, all of us, to say, no, this is really stupid. Okay? That's the level we have to get at here, or this is great, or it should include this, or something. So send proposals around to each other to bring back to our next meeting, okay? And in our terms of reference, it says we can pass things that we do by email, but, so we might not have to wait, but we likely will have to wait. We are at the hour here. We have not gotten to the Affordable Housing Development Incentives update. That was put in there in June for the July meeting, or in July for the August meeting that I canceled because there was no news on STRs. And also the changes to Provincial Affordable Housing Development Program. That was just a notice piece that that was current at that time. So, is there any other business or any other things that need to be said today?
Thank you, Bob.
Well, You've beaten me up. You're beating me to the punch here. I would very much like to thank Robert for the quality of his presentation, also for being here. I realize that you don't really want to eat lunch anytime. And Alex, same to you. We really appreciate it. And what is it? What do you say to the mayor? Your worship?
Philip. Call me Philip. I'll be back anytime. I'll be back at the next meeting too.
Your grace, whatever. We will see you all on the third Tuesday of, what's the next month? October. And we will really limit that agenda to just talking about, okay, what are we going to do about what council has just done? Okay? What are we going to say about that?
We wear a Halloween costume?
You can if you want, remembering that all these meetings are streamed. Okay, motion for adjournment? Amen.
Amen.
Okay, good.
Thanks.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Robin, you need to, or someone, yes. Rory can turn that off. Okay. Can't say anything stupid just yet.
That one wasn't a good one because